My sister maxed out the credit card I left on the table. She laughed and said, "I spent it on clothes and a vacation." But when Mom stormed in yelling, "Who stole my $18,000? My sister turned pale and everything exploded into chaos. I, 32M, left a credit card on the table and my sister maxed it out thinking it was mine, until Mom came home screaming about her missing $18,000. The card sat there on the kitchen table, unremarkable and forgotten. I had grabbed it from the mail earlier that day when I stopped by my childhood home to drop off some groceries for Mom. She had been asking me to help her sort through her finances lately, complaining about mystery charges and late fees she didn't understand. At 71, technology wasn't her strong suit, and I'd promised to help her organize everything over the weekend. I tossed the card on the table without thinking, planning to ask her about it later. It looked identical to mine. Same bank, same dark blue color, and I didn't give it a second glance before heading upstairs to fix her leaking bathroom faucet. That small oversight would trigger a chain of events that would tear our family apart in ways I never imagined possible. My sister had always been the golden child. She was 30 years old, but lived like she was still 21, bouncing between jobs and boyfriends with the kind of carelessness that only comes from knowing someone will always catch you when you fall. That someone was usually Mom. I'd watched this pattern repeat itself for years. My sister would make terrible decisions, Mom would bail her out, and I'd be left shaking my head from the sidelines while paying my own bills and keeping my life together. The resentment had been building for over a decade, but I kept my mouth shut. Family harmony seemed more important than my growing frustration with being the responsible one who got none of the attention or praise. I was the one who showed up when Mom needed help. I was the one who paid for repairs around the house and made sure she had groceries. But when my sister breezed through the door with her latest drama, suddenly I became invisible. I finished the faucet repair and came downstairs to find the card gone. I didn't think much of it. Mom probably picked it up and put it away. I grabbed my tools, said goodbye, and headed home to my apartment across town. 3 days passed before my phone exploded with messages. My sister's text came through first, a string of laughing emojis followed by a message that made my blood run cold. She told me she'd found my credit card on the table and decided to treat herself since I was always bragging about my good job and stable finances. She said she'd maxed it out on a shopping spree and booked a last-minute vacation to Miami with her friends. The casual cruelty in her words was stunning. She actually thanked me for being such a generous brother and said she'd pay me back eventually. Maybe, if she remembered. I stared at my phone in disbelief. I hadn't lost any credit card. Mine was sitting safely in my wallet where it had been all week. My hands shook as I called her, and she answered on the fourth ring, giggling about something in the background. I asked her what card she was talking about, keeping my voice level despite the panic rising in my chest. She told me not to play dumb, that she'd found the blue card on Mom's kitchen table and figured I'd left it there by accident. She said she'd already spent about $18,000, and honestly, it felt amazing to finally live a little. Her friends were so excited about Miami, and she'd bought this incredible new wardrobe that made her feel like a real adult for once. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. $18,000. The blue card. Mom's kitchen table. I told her she needed to check the name on that card immediately. The laughter died in her voice as I heard her rustling through her purse. The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Then came a small, confused noise, followed by a whispered curse that confirmed my worst fear. She'd taken Mom's card. The one I'd grabbed from the mail and left on the table. The one Mom had probably been looking for all week. I asked her what she was going to do, but she'd already hung up. I tried calling back 3 times, but she didn't answer. My mind raced through the implications. Mom lived on a fixed income, her Social Security, and a small pension from Dad's old job. $18,000 wasn't just a lot of money to her. It was potentially devastating. I drove to Mom's house immediately, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. When I pulled up, my sister's car was already there, parked at a crooked angle like she'd arrived in a panic. I walked in without knocking to find her sitting at that same kitchen table, her face pale and her hands trembling as she stared at the credit card lying in front of her like it might bite her. She looked up at me with genuine fear in her eyes, something I hadn't seen from her in years. She started to say something, but before she could get the words out, we heard Mom's car in the driveway. My sister's eyes went wide, and she grabbed my arm, begging me not to say anything, promising she'd figure this out, asking me to cover for her just this once. I pulled my arm away and stepped back. I'd covered for her too many times already. This was beyond sibling loyalty. This was theft, and Mom deserved to know the truth. Mom came through the door carrying grocery bags, and I moved to help her as I always did. She thanked me and started putting things away, chatting about her day at the senior center and how her friend had told her about suspicious charges appearing on credit cards lately. She mentioned she'd been trying to find her emergency card all week, but couldn't remember where she'd put it. She wondered aloud if she should call the bank to get a replacement. My sister sat frozen at the table, and I could see the panic attack building. Her breathing had gone shallow, and sweat beaded on her forehead. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then Mom's phone rang. She answered it, still putting away groceries, and her expression changed instantly. The color drained from her face as she gripped the counter for support. She asked whoever was calling to repeat what they'd just said, her voice shaking. She looked at the calendar on the wall, then at her purse, then slowly turned to face us with an expression I'd never seen before. She ended the call and stood there for a long moment, her hand still on the phone. When she finally spoke, her voice came out as barely more than a whisper. She asked if either of us knew anything about $18,000 in charges on her emergency credit card. The silence in that kitchen was suffocating. My sister opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at me with pleading eyes. I looked away. Mom asked the question again, louder this time, her voice cracking. She said the bank had just called about suspicious activity, charges in stores she'd never shopped at, and a plane ticket to Florida. She demanded to know who stole her card and spent money she didn't have. That's when my sister broke. She started crying, the kind of ugly, desperate crying that comes from realizing you've made a mistake you can't take back. She admitted she'd taken the card, but she swore she thought it was mine. She said I'd left it there, and she just assumed I wouldn't mind, and it was supposed to be a surprise, and she was going to pay it all back, and it was just a misunderstanding that got out of control. Mom's face transformed from confusion to comprehension to fury in the span of seconds. She exploded, her voice reaching levels I'd never heard from her. She demanded to know how my sister could be so stupid, so selfish, so completely thoughtless. She asked if my sister had any idea what $18,000 meant to someone on a fixed income. She asked if my sister even cared that this money was supposed to be for emergencies, for medical bills, for keeping her house if something went wrong. My sister kept crying and apologizing, but Mom wasn't hearing it. She turned to me and asked why I'd left her card on the table, and I explained about grabbing it from the mail to ask her about it later. I admitted I should have been more careful, but I never imagined my sister would steal from her. The word steal landed like a bomb. My sister started protesting that it wasn't stealing, it was a mistake, she didn't know, and Mom cut her off with a harsh laugh that had no humor in it. She said taking something that doesn't belong to you and spending $18,000 definitely qualified as stealing, mistake or not. Mom demanded my sister return everything she'd bought. My sister stammered that she couldn't. She'd already packed most of it for the trip, and some items were non-refundable, and the vacation was tomorrow, and maybe she could cancel some things, but not everything. Mom's expression went cold in a way that scared even me. She told my sister she had exactly 24 hours to return every single item and cancel that trip, or she'd be calling the police to report credit card fraud. My sister tried to argue that she couldn't do that to her own daughter, but Mom's voice stayed ice cold as she said she could and would if she didn't see $18,000 back in her account. I watched my sister's world crumble in real time. She begged. She cried. She promised she'd make it right, but Mom had reached her limit. She told my sister to get out of her house and not come back until she'd fixed this mess. After my sister left, Mom collapsed into a chair and aged about 10 years in front of my eyes. She asked me how this happened, how her daughter could do something like this. I sat across from her and finally said what I'd been thinking for years. I told her this happened because she'd never let my sister face real consequences for anything. I said my sister had learned that someone would always fix her problems, and this was the inevitable result of that lesson. Mom got defensive at first, but then she just looked tired. She admitted she knew she'd enabled my sister, but she'd always told herself it was just helping her daughter through hard times. She'd never imagined it would lead to something like this. Update 1. The next 24 hours were chaos. My sister called me 17 times, each call more desperate than the last. She begged me to talk to Mom, to convince her not to press charges, to lend her money to pay back what she couldn't return. I refused every request. For once in my life, I wasn't going to rescue her from herself. She managed to return about $8,000 worth of merchandise. The vacation was completely non-refundable. The airline and hotel had strict policies, and she'd booked everything for immediate travel. The remaining purchases had been worn, used, or couldn't be returned for various reasons. She was $10,000 short. When the deadline passed, Mom called the police. I was there when they arrived, and I watched my sister get arrested for credit card fraud. The officer explained that because of the amount involved, it was considered a felony. My sister screamed at Mom the whole time they were putting her in the car, calling her horrible names and saying she was ruining her life over a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. That was the thing everyone kept missing. Even after she knew it was Mom's card, she kept spending. She knew exactly what she was doing when she bought that last pair of designer shoes and booked first-class plane tickets. She just never thought she'd have to pay for it. Mom cried after they took my sister away, but she didn't back down. She told me she couldn't keep enabling this behavior, not when it had escalated to stealing from her. She said she loved my sister, but love didn't mean accepting being victimized by your own child. The family erupted in taking sides. Mom's sister called me screaming, saying I should have stopped this, that I was cruel for not preventing the arrest. Some cousins messaged me saying Mom had gone too far. That family doesn't send family to jail. My sister's friends flooded social media with posts about how heartless our mother was for pressing charges over money. But they didn't know the full story. They didn't know about the years of bailouts and excuses. They didn't know that Mom now had to take out a loan at 71 years old to cover the $10,000 my sister couldn't return. They didn't know that Mom's emergency fund was gone, leaving her vulnerable in ways that terrified me. I stood by Mom's decision. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible in my own family. Mom actually thanked me for being there, for being reliable, for not making excuses for my sister's behavior. It felt good, but it also felt sad that it had taken something this extreme to get here. Update 2. My sister took a plea deal. Her public defender convinced her that going to trial would be stupid given the evidence. She got 3 years probation, court-ordered restitution of the full amount including interest, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory financial counseling. She also has a felony on her record now, which she blamed everyone but herself for during her sentencing. She moved in with her boyfriend after the arrest since Mom wouldn't let her back in the house. That relationship imploded within 2 months when he realized she expected him to pay for everything. She bounced between friends' couches for a while, burning bridges everywhere she went by stealing, lying, or just being an entitled nightmare. The restitution payments come directly from her paycheck now. The court ordered wage garnishment after she missed the first 3 payments. She's working at a call center making barely above minimum wage, and most of it goes to paying Mom back. She'll be paying for years at this rate. Mom struggled with guilt for months. She'd wake up crying, wondering if she'd done the right thing. I reminded her constantly that she had. She couldn't let my sister destroy her financial security out of misplaced maternal loyalty. Eventually, Mom started seeing a therapist to work through the complicated emotions of having to prosecute your own child. The family gatherings became awkward, divided affairs. Half the family refused to speak to Mom or me, convinced we'd been too harsh. The other half quietly admitted they'd watched my sister's behavior escalate for years and were relieved someone finally drew a line. Holidays became small, quiet events instead of the large family chaos they used to be. My sister and I don't speak. She sent me a message once saying I was dead to her for not stopping Mom from calling the police. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. She'd stolen from our elderly mother and expected everyone to just accept it because family. That's not how the world works, and it's not how I work. Update 3. It's been 14 months since the credit card incident. Mom is doing better financially. She refinanced some things and picked up part-time work doing bookkeeping for a local business. She says it keeps her mind sharp and gives her something to do. The loan to cover my sister's theft is slowly getting paid down between the restitution payments and Mom's extra income. My sister hit rock bottom about 6 months ago. She got evicted from her 3rd apartment for not paying rent, lost her call center job for attitude problems, and ended up staying in a shelter for a few weeks. That's when she finally started to change. Or at least, That's when she started pretending to change. I'm honestly not sure which it is yet. She reached out to Mom through a letter, not asking for money or help, but apologizing. Actually apologizing, acknowledging what she'd done and the impact it had. Mom showed me the letter, crying as she read it aloud. My sister wrote that hitting rock bottom made her realize she'd spent 30 years expecting the world to accommodate her instead of working to accommodate herself in the world. She said she understood now why Mom pressed charges, and she was grateful for it, even though it had destroyed her life temporarily. Mom wanted to reach out immediately. I advised caution. Talk is cheap, and my sister had always been good at saying what people wanted to hear when she needed something. Mom agreed to wait and see if actions followed words. They did, surprisingly. My sister got a job as a waitress at a diner, not glamorous, but steady. She moved into a tiny studio apartment that she actually kept for more than 3 months. She started going to the financial counseling sessions voluntarily instead of treating them as a court-ordered annoyance. She even picked up a second part-time job on weekends to increase her restitution payments. Mom and my sister had coffee together last month. I didn't go, but Mom told me about it afterward. She said my sister looked different, older, tired, but also more grounded somehow. They talked about everything that happened, and my sister didn't make excuses or blame anyone else. She owned it, all of it. She told Mom she understood if she could never fully forgive her, but she wanted to try to rebuild some kind of relationship over time. I'm still skeptical. 14 months isn't enough to erase 30 years of entitlement and bad behavior. But Mom seems cautiously hopeful, and I won't take that away from her. She's been through enough. As for me, I've maintained my distance. My sister sent me a letter too, but I haven't opened it yet. Maybe I will eventually. Maybe I won't. Right now, I'm focusing on making sure Mom is stable and secure, which is what I should have been doing all along instead of quietly resenting my sister from the sidelines. The whole situation taught me something important about family dynamics and enablement. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the full consequences of their actions, even when it hurts everyone involved. Mom saved my sister's life by pressing charges, even though it felt like she was destroying it at the time. My sister was on a path that would have eventually led somewhere much worse than probation and a felony record. At least now she has a chance to become someone better. The credit card still sits in a drawer at Mom's house, cut into pieces. She says she keeps it as a reminder that love and boundaries aren't opposites. They're partners. You can't truly love someone while allowing them to hurt you or themselves without consequence. That's not love. That's just fear wrapped in familial obligation. I don't know if our family will ever fully heal from this. The rifts run deep, and some relatives will probably never speak to us again. But the family we have left is honest now. We're not pretending everything is fine while dysfunction festers underneath. That's worth something, even if it cost us the illusion of a perfect family. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, and sometimes you have to take out the trash yourself. Either way, the house is cleaner afterward, even if it feels emptier for a while.